Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is John Jake Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the NCSL Dynasty here exclusively on College Football Revamped. We have just completed our inaugural season here in year number 1. What was accomplished in year number 1 was eventually we did see a champion crowned, and we saw the Miami Hurricanes win by beating UCLA 41-16 being that final score. It wasn't particularly close, but here in this episode, what we are going to do is that we are going to go ahead and take the time to highlight not only the award winners from this season, and not only just the major awards, but also the Heisman Trophy. We will also take a look at the All-Americans that are featured in this inaugural season. We'll also check out the coaching carousel to see what new coaches are going to be leading brand new programs when that is time to do so. We'll also take a look to see who is going to the NFL, those notable guys, and will be included in Madden 24 as well. So those guys that are going to the NFL, well, they will be included in year 1 of our franchise series that we will be doing in Madden 24 once that game is officially released. And then we'll wrap things up by taking a look at recruiting over the course of the season, who ended up with the best classes, and where are the best individual players. Where are they going to go, and where will they sign, so that you guys who want custom players and possibly custom coaches, you guys will have a better idea of where you guys want to go to start either your college football careers, or in playing, or in coaching. So it's going to be a fun episode. I am really excited about this particular episode, and if you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, hit that subscribe button for me as well if you do have to be brand new. And without further ado, let's go ahead and check in first and foremost with the final top 25 poll. So in that final top 25 poll, we do see Miami on top. They end up getting that perfect 9-0 in conference play, and that 16-0, which warrants a national championship. Other teams that did get in here is Ole Miss at number 2, Syracuse at 3, UCLA moves down to 4, even though he did make it to the national championship game. Other notable movements do include LSU at 6, Nebraska at 7, and California at 8, while rounding out your top 10 is Washington and USC. Going outside the top 10, though, North Carolina, coming off their big win against the Gasparilla Bowl, they go to number 11. Michigan State, they fall to 12 after the loss to Nebraska, while Minnesota also falls 5 spots as a result of the big loss to LSU. Then we also have Oregon. Baylor comes in at 15. They beat South Carolina in their bowl game. Ohio State, they're number 16 overall. That is after blowing out Oklahoma. Arkansas moves up to number 17. Boise State up to number 18. Oklahoma only falls a couple of spots down to number 19. And then rounding out your group is Georgia, Arkansas State, who does sneak into the final top 25 poll, Pittsburgh, Navy, Penn State, who's also back in the top 25, and then UNLV, who we saw one time, and that was in the Hawaii Bowl. They get to number 25 in the country, and they do so after a Hawaii Bowl victory over the Army Military Academy. But now we'll go and see the Heisman Trophy winners over the course of this season. And the Heisman Trophy will be awarded to Joe McDaniel. Joe McDaniel, a senior redshirt from Sacramento. He played for the Washington Huskies in a complete season. He ends his year with over 3,000 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but did have 14 rushing touchdowns on the ground. That does tie his career high. He does also win the O'Brien and the Maxwell Award. Runners-up for the Heisman Trophy do include John Blair of Michigan, Darryl Foster, the senior redshirt out of the University of Nebraska, Jacob Butler, a junior quarterback out of Syracuse. He could be back. He actually should be back for his senior season, but really overachieved in his junior campaign. And then Warren Williams, the senior redshirt out of Odessa, Texas. He represents for USC. As for your other awards, like I do mention, Joe McDaniels does win the Maxwell Award winner, but one of your custom guys, or at least one of your custom coach guys, has somebody in the Maxwell Award race. Robert Richardson had an amazing year with over 2,600 yards receiving and 27 touchdowns. He was lining it up all season long. As for the Walter Camp Award, that goes to Daryl Foster out of Nebraska. He finishes a complete season with nearly 1,800 yards on the ground, plus 22 rushing touchdowns. That does also include 8 receptions for 100 yards in his final year of eligibility. Unsure if he makes it to the NFL, though. As for the Bednarik, that goes to Preston Scales, the junior redshirt out of the University of Miami. He was hurt towards the end of the year, but a great year for the junior out of Coral Springs, Florida, who had 13 sacks, multiple forced fumbles, and even got an interception in there as well. Preston Scales had an excellent season. As for the Nagurski Award, it goes actually to a true freshman. Stanley Jones is going to get it from Fruitvale, Colorado. The true freshman was electric, finishing the year with 15 sacks, a forced fumble, and not to mention a defensive touchdown to go with all of that. As for the O'Brien Award, that does also go to Joe McDaniel out of Washington. Another one of your custom coach guys did get in here, though. This is Jerome Malone of Northern Illinois University. He had 49 total touchdowns and finished 7th in the O'Brien race. As for the Walker Award, that again goes to Daryl Foster, who gets a lot of the awards for being a elite running back at the college ranks. For the Blitikoff, that goes to Robert Richardson, who wins it for Northern Illinois, but a runner-up out of Troy, though, Claude Taylor, the junior redshirt from Cleveland Heights, Ohio. He had a great season himself. He had 1,700 yards and 16 touchdowns, really making a name for himself. For the John Mackey Award, that goes to the best tight end in the country. It goes to the senior redshirt from Rice, Victor Dinkins. From Hewitt, Texas, so he is Texas born and raised. He finished the year with over 1,000 yards receiving, plus 8 touchdown grabs, as he helped Rice have a very successful season, culminating in a Texas Bowl victory. For the Outwin Trophy, for one of the best offensive linemen, it goes to Joel Dorsey, the senior redshirt from Akron. So he left the Buckeye State to play for the Wolverines. During the year, he had 50 pancakes while allowing just 8 sacks over at left guard. For the center award, though, for the Remington best center goes to another Michigan offensive lineman, Perry Bryant. Perry Bryant from East Los Angeles, California, finished the year with 39 pancakes and 8 sacks. He will also be named to that All-American list. For the Lombardi Award, that also goes to Stanley Jones, his second award here in the inaugural season of the NCSL. For the Butkus Award, that goes to Todd Carter, the senior redshirt out of Fairfield, California. Playing for USC this season, he had nearly 100 tackles, had multiple sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and also an interception. Todd Carter was the unquestioned leader of the USC defense this season. For the Jim Forpay Award, that goes to the safety out of LSU in Josh Ridgway. In his junior redshirt campaign from Gastonia, North Carolina, he had nearly 100 tackles himself, plus 12 TFLs, a sack, and multiple forced fumbles, which one did lead to a defensive touchdown. He might be back for his senior year. As for Groza, that goes to the best kicker in college football, that will be provided to Nate Austin, the senior from Salina, Ohio. He went 25 for 30 on field goals with a long of 49 and made all but 1 extra point over the course of the season. For punters, that goes to the sophomore from Belmead, Texas, in UCLA punter Buck Wagner. That is one heck of a name. Out of the 75 punts that he had over the course of the season, he had 18 of them down inside the 20-yard line, plus he did have a long of 77 yards. Starting to round out your group is the Jet Award, which will go to free safety Brad Cooper, the sophomore redshirt out of Oxnard, California. Playing for the North Carolina Tar Heels this season, he had over 1,000 return yards over the course of the year, with 4 of those turning into special teams touchdowns. So now we go into the All-American list for the NCAA, and we do have some surprises actually. Starting with the first team All-American list, we have Jerome Malone of Northern Illinois. He gets first team honors. Then in the backfield, we have Kevin Corbett, the senior out of Oklahoma, tagged with senior running back Darryl Foster. For the receivers receiving first team All-Americans, we have the person that won the Blinicoff as well as the runner-up in Robert Richardson out of Northern Illinois, plus Quan Taylor, the junior out of the University of Troy. Rounding out your skill position guys on the offensive side of the ball is Victor Dickens, the senior from Rice, who won the John Mackey Award. And your offensive line has 3 Michigan guys in Rob James, Joel Dorsey, who won the Outland Trophy, and Perry Bryant, who won the Remington. Rounding out your offensive line, though, is Darius Childress, the senior redshirt out of Sharonsville, Ohio, and a FCS guy, actually, Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas is a senior redshirt from Orange, Texas. Now, for the defensive side of the ball, and I think this is no surprise here at all, Stanley Jones does win All-American honors, so no surprise there. But his teammate also gets defensive end honors as well. Preston Scales was a teammate of Stanley Jones. As for the interior defensive line, Chad Weldon is also on there, so another defensive All-American for Miami. Actually, the only non-All-American for Miami on the defensive line is Jelani Matthews, the sophomore out of Live Oak, Texas. He actually played for LSU. Now, for the linebackers, we go to Rodney Bouchard as the highlight of this group. He's a junior from Jefferson City, Missouri. The junior was a player of LSU as well. But the other linebackers ended up being Chad Flynn, the sophomore redshirt, from Springfield, Illinois, who played for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And Todd Carter is unsurprisingly also here, an All-American at USC. Then we, of course, have the DBs, and the DBs were led by Lee Williams from Fort Meade, Florida. He was in his final year of college eligibility for the Miami Hurricanes. Ronnie McCollum is also here. He's a senior redshirt from North Carolina. He calls Pearl, Mississippi home. And for your safeties is Josh Ridgway, who did win the Forpay Award for LSU. And rounding out is Alfred Flynn, the FCS transfer out of Sacramento State. He's a senior for Ole Miss. Of course, we do also have Josh Sanders, the kicker, to round out this group from North Carolina, and Buck Wagner, the punter from UCLA, with Brad Cooter getting first team All-American honors as a return person. Now for the second team All-American group, we have Joe McDaniel of Washington, followed by John Blair of Michigan. Then with the other running back on this second team list, we have AJ Mitchell, a senior redshirt from Central Michigan. He calls Marshall, Michigan home. Now, for the wide receivers, we got Paul Mitchell, the senior out of Minnesota. He was born and raised in that state for the Golden Gophers. And we also have Kevin James, the senior redshirt from Country Club established Georgia. He played for Kansas State this past season. Rounding out the group is another All-American for Miami. That's Antoine Bryant, the senior redshirt from Fort Myers, Florida, received second team honors for the tight end position. As for the offensive line, we have Howard Coleman of Miami, who's a junior. Andrew Russ, a senior from Ole Miss, followed by the senior Mike Johnson out of USC. And rounding out your offensive line is Max Felder, the senior redshirt from Miami, and Ryan Nelson, a senior from Oklahoma. Meanwhile, for the defense side of the ball, we got Brian Schultz, the senior redshirt from Swainsboro, Georgia, actually had a scoop and score for the North Carolina Tar Heels. We also saw Shannon McConnell, the senior out of Ole Miss, getting that run stopper status for Ole Miss. He was a second team All-American as well. And rounding out the defensive line is Josh Romero of the Tar Heels and Chad Moley, a junior for LSU. For the linebackers, real quick, we have Jamal Cutler, a sophomore redshirt from Lynette, Alabama, played for the Georgia Bulldogs. James Lee is also here as an FCS transfer. He actually works himself up to a 96 overall, so he has a very good chance of getting drafted into the NFL. Chris Smith is here as well. The senior redshirt played above his overall as he's just a 79, but still a second-team All-American anyways. But who knows if he can squeeze on to an NFL roster. Now, for the corners, we have Maurice Smith, the sophomore redshirt from Georgia, with Neil Johnson on the opposite side. He's a senior from USC. Your safeties in the second-team group is Jason Jones, the senior redshirt from the Michigan Wolverines, followed by David Flowers, a sophomore from Washington. And finally, rounding out your second-team group is Nate Austin, who won the Groza Award. Thought he should have been first team with the Groza Award, but the All-American board disagreed. Elgin Russell, a junior from LSU, does get second-team honors from the All-American board. Finally, the last All-American to be named is Market Gaston, a junior redshirt from Washington. He got on as a returner. Now, real quick, I will end up showing the freshman All-American list. This did end up being your group this season, and a lot of young talent that stepped up over the course of the season because, you know, some of these guys were freshman redshirts, but most of them, from what I'm seeing, actually were true freshmen that stepped in right away and made huge differences in their program. And next year, since some of you guys will be coming in as true freshmen, maybe you will see some of you guys on this list potentially. But great years for everyone on this freshman All-American list, as well as the first and second team All-American group. But now we find ourselves in the coach carousel, and while I will not show you guys every single hire that happens, what I will at least do is that I will show you guys every head coaching hire that happens here in the NCSL offseason, as well as any movement that does involve your custom coaches. So with that, we will go ahead and jump right into it. First offer that we do end up having is LSU, and LSU they do hire the head coach from Southern Mississippi, Mark Van, who led his team to an 8-5 record this past season. So now University of Southern Miss will be looking for a head coach. UCLA also saw their coach in Chip Kelly retired, so they need a new head coach, and they hired Brent Brennan to a 5-year contract. He was the head coach of Rice. He led his team to an 8-5 record, as well as a Texas Bowl victory. He is also from UCLA originally, that is his alma mater. Mike Norvell was re-extended. He signed a 5-year contract to stay with Florida State after an 8-5 record. Jason Candle was fired after failing to meet expectations, and for the Stanford Condor, they end up hiring Pete Golding from the University of Colorado, led the Buffaloes to a 10-4 record, and runs an Alabama offense. Replacing Pete Golding, though, is the head coach from UNLV, and that is Kurt Maddox. Kurt Maddox led UNLV to a top 25 type season after a Hawaii Bowl victory. He's now the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. West Virginia did also fire their coach after a very disappointing season. And for West Virginia's next coach, they hire Brent Key, the head coach from Georgia Southern, led them to a bowl victory over Texas Tech, and now he'll be coaching the Mountaineers out in the MAC Conference. Southern's Miss coach actually did end up going to LSU, and to replace him is a team that they played in the bowl game. Kansas State's head coach Graham Harrell, he goes to Southern Miss, led Kansas State to a 9-4 record, and runs the Kentucky offense and a 4-2-5 defense. Sonny Dykes also could not take care of business in terms of leading TCU to just a 4-8 record. So Pat Fitzgerald, who used to be, you guys know him as the head coach of Northwestern, he was the defensive coordinator for LSU, and Pat Fitzgerald, he's now going to be the head coach of the TCU Horned Frogs. For Louisiana Tech, they fired their head coach after just going 5-7, and they go to James Madison for their next guy. Max Warner is on a 5-year contract. He is from Illinois, and he led James Madison to a 7-5 season, but just weren't invited to a bowl game. Up next is the Maryland Terrapins, and Maryland hires Sam Gregg from Western Kentucky, led them to, I believe it was a bowl victory against Oregon State. His team went 8-5 over the course of this season, but will have a challenge at Maryland. Maryland just a 2-star program. So after Brent Key left for the West Virginia job, the new head coach of Georgia Southern is going to be Ryan Grubb. He's the offensive coordinator from Washington, one of the better coordinator candidates that was available. He is from Iowa State as his alma mater. We did also see UNLV's head coach leave for Colorado. So the new coach for the Rebels will be Tyson Helton, the offensive coordinator from Ole Miss. He runs an air raid offense. Brent Brennan of Rice did leave for the UCLA job, but they end up going over in the East Coast to grab Scott Simmons, the defensive coordinator from the University of Michigan. He was a defensive coordinator for them who ran that 4-2-5 defense. Michigan was in the college football playoff. Boston College was also in need of a new coach after firing David Shaw, and they name offensive coordinator Tim Albin the head coach of Boston College. He was previously the offensive coordinator for North Carolina. Now, Kentucky only went with a 5-7 record this past season, but he did end up retiring at the conclusion of this year. Leading the new era of Kentucky football will be offensive coordinator Neil Brown, who most recently coached at Michigan State. Southern, the head coach of Kansas State, did go to Southern Miss, and leading the Wildcats will be the defensive coordinator for North Carolina, Sheil Wood, for the next era of Kansas State football. As for the head coaching offering for James Madison, their coach left to take on the Louisiana Tech job, and they end up grabbing the head coach position for University of Louisiana Monroe, Clayton White. He coached the Warhawks to an 8-5 record, but they did lose to Rice in the bowl game. UCF, however, will be going in a new direction after firing Brian Ellis, and the new leader of UCF will be Jason Williams, who last coached at the University of Oklahoma, where he was the defensive coordinator. He'll get a shot to coach his football team. NC State now going about a new era of Wolfpack football, as they're just a 1-star program now. The new head coach of this team will be Luke Pittman. He was the head coach of Hawaii, and he's left Hawaii because he was actually fired. Meanwhile, that coach for Alex Grinch, who was fired from West Virginia, he will end up landing on his feet, becoming the new head coach of the Western Michigan Broncos. The previous head coach, and Mike Gundy, did retire. So meanwhile, the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, after letting Luke Pittman go, they hire the offensive coordinator from Colorado, Timmy Jang, to a 5-year extension, hoping for a better era of Hawaii football because they have a really interesting offense. Now, as for the Kansas Jayhawks, they fired Eric Kocher after going just 2-10 in American Conference play. Their new head coach will be Des Kitching, the offensive coordinator at Georgia Southern. He'll get his head coaching shot as well. Now, at this point, Willie Hammock Jr., the offensive coordinator at Northern Illinois, was given a contract offer. However, for the custom coaches, I do want it to be realistic. You're not going to see yourself go from a 1-star program as a coordinator to a 1-star program as a head coach. Plus, he got that 5-year contract offer, and I know the person that did submit this guy as a custom coach, he's a Northern Illinois lifer, so I know he would be disappointed if I actually had him on a different team. So Thomas Hannick Jr. is actually going to sign the contract extension and will decline the offer to be the head coach of Western Kentucky. Who will actually take that job, though, is Bill Busch, the defensive coordinator at Nebraska. As for the head coach of Troy, what ended up happening with the Troy Trojans is Michael Dorzimuk did end up getting fired from his head coaching job after that disappointing 2-10 season. Who will be the new head man for Alabama? Georgian Leslie will actually be that guy. He was a Troy alumni as well. Now, Indiana just went 1-11. They narrowly missed out on a winless season, but a little too close to comfort, so Glenn Schumann did end up getting fired. The new head coach for Indiana is going to be Scott Schaefer, who had his contract expire at Western Kentucky. He was the defensive coordinator for the Hilltoppers. As for the Toledo Rockets, Jed Fish was fired after just going 3-9. The Rockets needed an overhaul, and they're going to turn to Chad Staggs, who was the head coach at Utah State, and he was fired from Utah State. So it'll be interesting to see who the Utah State Aggies pick as their next head coach. But now we see who Utah State goes with their new head coach, and they will grab the former head coach from Boston College, David Shaw. We'll see if he can do a better job at Utah State than the 3-9 record that he put together in his first year with the Boston College Eagles. But we get some big news for Jake Jacobs, who was looking for a promotion after going and being a pretty solid coordinator for Temple this past season. He gets the job offer to be the defensive coordinator at TCU, and TCU, I think he is actually going to accept this offer to become the new defensive coordinator for the TCU Horned Frogs. A great opportunity for him as he ends up signing on that dotted line. So congratulations to Jake Jacobs on the promotion and now being the defensive coordinator for the TCU Horned Frogs. But now we move towards the players actually leaving their respective programs, either through graduation or through other means like entering the transfer portal or declaring early for the NFL draft. We'll start with some of the notable guys that are leaving early for the NFL. That does include two very notable guys. That does include Quincy Moore, the strong safety out of USC. He's forgoing his senior year, and this is a good decision for him. He's projected to go in the second round of the NFL draft. Rob James is also another guy to keep an eye out for. He's also forgoing his senior year to be a third round projected pick. He is from the University of Michigan. Other notable early declarees to keep an eye on is Jim Thompson, the wide receiver out of Penn State. He's projected to go in the fourth round of the NFL draft. Josh Maxwell is also another guy as well. He's looking to be a fifth round pick in the NFL draft alongside Robert Parker, the junior free safety from the University of Texas. Speaking of the University of Texas, Adam Allen is also declaring early. He's projected to go in the fifth round and also played for the Texas Longhorns. Speaking of quarterbacks, Robert Tucker will also forgo his junior season. He will be playing at he was playing at Ohio State. He's a projected sixth round pick. Speaking of sixth round picks for Ohio State, Bradley Jackson will also be leaving the program. He was a wide receiver. As for the University of Temple, Chris Caldwell is leaving as a sixth round pick for the Owls. He played defensive tackle. Speaking of defensive tackles, we got Jed Peterson, a junior redshirt from the University of Tennessee. But while there was nobody that was above an 80 overall going into the transfer portal, there still was a couple of surprises in terms of guys that were rumored to go to the NFL but are actually deciding to stay. William Butler was one of them. He was a sophomore redshirt from the University of Nebraska. Good season for him, 730 yards and 5 touchdowns, but he is staying at least for his junior season. And then another wide receiver, this one from the University of Georgia, Sax Grigsby's, he is coming back for his senior year as well. Finally, in terms of notable guys that are staying, is David Penn. He's a junior redshirt from Texas A&M. He's staying for his senior year as well. So I'm not going to show every single person that is going to the NFL draft, but everyone that does declare for the NFL draft, that will be tossed into a customized draft class for our Madden 24 series that is coming out this fall. So first, we'll start with the quarterbacks, and I'll just talk about the first round guys, but if you want to see the entire draft class that will be included in the year one draft class from this NCSL series, that will be included down in the pinned comments section. But first, we will go for the quarterbacks. Two notable ones to look after. Terrence Manson, he's a senior redshirt from Dewey, South Carolina. He's a first round pick for the Ole Miss Rebels. And then the other quarterback to really watch out for is Cornelius Graves, who is up to a 98 overall. He's a true senior that played for the Texas Tech Rebels. Now, at running back, there's actually 3 running backs in this class that could go in the first round. One is a pretty surefire gimme. This is John Blair, the senior out of the University of Michigan, alongside Josh Wheeler from Toledo. Did not see Toledo play much at all this year, but Josh Wheeler did ball out for the Rockets. And then Cole Hunter, the running back for North Carolina, is also a bona fide first round pick, it seems like. For fullbacks, there is no fullbacks that are really getting much love. A few of them might make it to the NFL, but not really a lot to talk about here. Eric Silva and J.R. Tucker, alongside Jabari Turner, might be NFL prospects, even though they played that fullback position. For wide receiver, a lot of wide receivers that are entering the transfer portal, but 4 guys that could go in the first round of the NFL draft. Chad Newton being one of them. He's a senior redshirt from the University of Miami. Jared Weld, also a senior redshirt from the University of Michigan. Brian Montoya, a senior redshirt from Nebraska. And rounding out your group is Terry Cohen, the senior redshirt from Penn State. For tight ends, we actually just have 1 tight end that is projected to go in the first round of the NFL draft, and that is Marquise Green, a true senior that played for the USC Trojans, but comes from Grosvenor Point, Virginia. Starting on the offensive line, though, a little bit of surprise here at the left tackle position. 1 left tackle being projected for the first round, and that is Tom Thompson, the senior redshirt from Utah State. No left guards, however, going to the NFL. That's at least a projected first round pick, but there is a decent number of guards, though, that do have NFL potential. At center, it is the same case. Got 6 pros that have NFL aspirations to go with it as well. For right guard, we do have 1 person capable of being a first rounder, and that is Darius Childress, the senior redshirt for the Georgia Bulldog. And rounding out the offensive line, 2 right tackles that have NFL first round aspirations. That's Brian Moss of Florida State, who was a true senior, and then Paul Muhammad, a senior from Ohio State, also getting first round consideration early on in the draft process. Going over to the defensive side of the football, though, we start with left end on the defensive line. 2 first-round caliber players here, as we have Adam Reese, the senior redshirt for Ohio State, as well as Vernon Triplett, the senior redshirt from the University of Washington. On the opposite side of the defensive line, 2 more guys that could shine. Robert Giltry being one of them as the senior redshirt for LSU. And then Jared Riley of the Naval Academy, if he can get his waiver from the Department of Defense, because Naval, actually all military graduates, they do have to go into military service. Unless they can get a waiver from the Department of Defense, then they can waiver it. But if he does get that waiver, he is a projected first round pick too. Rounding out the defensive line, though, is the defensive tackles, and got at least a couple here, though. We got Travis Duckett, who's a senior redshirt from Arkansas, and Andrew Bentley of California. 1 more defensive tackle being included in here, though, is Devron Sims, a senior redshirt from Florida State. Now, moving over to the linebackers, and no left outside linebackers that are projected to go in the first round of the NFL draft, but this is a relatively deep class here, though, for outside linebackers outside the first round. But we do have one linebacker that could go in the first round of the NFL draft, though, at the very least. At middle linebacker, we got Jimmy Johnson, the senior redshirt from Michigan, hailing from the city of brotherly love. Right outside linebacker also has two guys featured in that first round consideration. James Lee, who is a FCS transfer to the University of Georgia. He boosted his stock all the way up to the first round. And Todd Goddard, the senior redshirt from USC. Now going to the DBs, and we might have at least one white corner being drafted at that quarterback position, and in the first round as well. That is Ken Brown, the senior redshirt out of Baylor. The other two corners to watch for first round consideration is Evan Holt of Michigan and Jeremy Fisher, a senior from Ole Miss. Meanwhile, at the free safety position, another defensive player from the University of Georgia, Lee Walker. He was a senior and is the only projected first-round pick at the free safety position. And the only one being projected for the first round at the strong safety position is Kyle Wadden, who's a senior at the University of Miami. Of course, we got our kickers and punters that could also be drafted. Two guys to watch out for kickers is Shane Miles, the kicker for Miami, and then Josh James, the senior kicker from Georgia. And at punter, a couple more guys that could be drafted is Brandon Jackson from Florida State and Lawrence Anderson, the senior from Toledo. But before we move on to recruiting, there was a few of your guys that did actually graduate from the custom prospect ranks because they did take over senior red shirts. One of them was from the Temple Owls, Jacob Solonsky. He was the fullback at the University of Temple. Did get a lot of opportunities his 2 years that he was on the field, but did amass 25 rushing yards and then ended up with free receiving touchdowns his senior year. So he did make an impact for a team that honestly should have been involved in a bowl game. And then two other custom guys that are graduating because of the same circumstance. They took over senior guys. One is Jalen Wallace, the run stopper from South Carolina. Jalen Wallace put together a solid season, ended up with 8 TFLs and 2 sacks. Also managed to force a fumble and got a fumble recovery too in his senior year. He saw the field 2 out of 5 years. Meanwhile, TJ Brown was named a captain of the defense this season. He was one of the best players on the struggling Duke squad. He did not get to the quarterback. He didn't get any sacks this year, but he was a ball hawk, getting 7 career interceptions, as well as 2 forced fumbles and 2 fumble recoveries over the course of his career. And while he's not projected to go to the NFL, he was a very good college player for the Duke Blue Devils. But now let's go ahead and look through recruiting real fast in order to see where the top players and who ended up signing those top classes as well. So we'll go ahead and start with the most important position on the football field, and that is that quarterback position. There was actually only one quarterback that was a 5-star recruit, and it was Chad Brown. He's from Lompoc, California, and he's actually going to go all the way across the country in order to play for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He is somebody that is going to also have a scholarship offer to the University of Oregon, but Notre Dame did end up winning out. He is considered a balanced quarterback who can both run and throw the football effectively. Up next, we have the #1 running back in high school football, and it ends up being Todd Thompson from Pearl City, Hawaii. So Hawaii with some elite prospects out there. Was not as highly recruited as you thought, but Todd Thompson does decide to play at the University of California, even though he did not have a scholarship at California. So a little bit of a surprise. He chose Cal over LSU, who did offer a scholarship. So an interesting dynamic there. Todd Thompson, he's someone that is considered a power back, but runs a 4.4 40-yard dash. For fullbacks is a dying position on the field, but don't tell that to these guys. Leonard Burrell is the #1 fullback in the country. He's from Biloxi, Mississippi, and that's where he will stay to play his college football. He's going to go to the University of Southern Mississippi. Leonard Burrell is considered more of a receiving threat, so he could be a dynamic threat out of the backfield and plays from the Vegas of the East Coast for those that have been to Biloxi, Mississippi. For the wide receivers ends up going to be from New Roads, Louisiana, as Michael Daughtry was the #1 wide receiver in college football, or high school football, I should say. He is a 5-star player, and he chooses to go to LSU, and this was a very highly sought-out recruit. This is a guy who had scholarship offers to Army, Utah, Miami, and the Charlotte 49ers were also in the mix for this guy as well, but he is going to stay home ultimately to play for the LSU Tigers for his college football career. At the tight end position, there were only 4 tight ends that were considered 5-star worthy, but Brian Jennings was the #1 tight end in high school football from Castle Rock, Colorado. He's going to sign on the dotted line to play for the USC Trojans. Brian Jennings did also have scholarship offers to Washington, UCLA, and LSU as well, with University of Alabama showing some significant interest. This was a battle that carried into the offseason, but the USC Trojans were the one team that ultimately won it out. Going out to the offensive line now, starting with the tackle position. And while there was no elite tackle prospect in high school football, Dwayne McDonald was considered the best tackle prospect in the high school ranks, as he's from Ashbury Park, New Jersey. The 4-star in Delane McDonald signs with the University of Auburn, but Temple and South Alabama, they were deep in this race as well. They were competing for this kid, but Dwayne McDonald ultimately decides to go to the University of Auburn. Now, for the guard position, there was one guard prospect in high school football that got the 5-star ranking. It was Derek McNamara from Fort Hunt, Virginia, but he's going to go all the way across the country to play for the USC Trojans. Also had other scholarship offers to the University of Georgia and Ohio State as well. Another battle that carried into the offseason. USC doing a fantastic job of getting some high-end prospects. This is their second #1 player that they get in this recruiting class. And then rounding out the offensive side of the ball, we have the centers. And while there were no 5-star centers in this class, not a lot of 4-stars either. But the #1 center in high school football was Matt Coleman out of Smithfield, North Carolina. And Matt Coleman, he chooses to sign with Ohio State. He did also have a scholarship offer, though, to the Penn State Nittany Lions. So 2 former Big Ten powers really going at it against each other, but Ohio State does end up winning that recruiting battle. Moving over to the defensive side of the football, though, we have the #1 defensive end in high school football. One of 3 5-star guys at defensive end, but the #1 guy was Justin Patton out of Superior, Wisconsin, but not going too terribly far, as he's going to play his football at the University of Michigan. Michigan had an early beat on him, and no other school bothered to offer him a scholarship because Justin Patton was locked in very early into the Michigan Wolverines. Now, as for the interior of the defensive line, it ends up being Justin Butler, who is the #1 defensive tackle in high school football. He's from San Jose, California, and he is actually going to stay in the state of California to play his college football as he signs with USC. The Trojans getting another top prospect with other scholarship offers from the University of Cal, Washington State, and shoot, UNLV was also in the mix as well. But the Trojans, again, getting another top player. This is the third #1 guy that USC has brought in. Seems like they put together a pretty strong class, at least a top heavy one at the bare minimum. And now we go to the linebackers, and we go with the outside linebackers first. No 5-star outside linebackers in this recruiting class. But the number 1 outside linebacker was Rory Joseph out of Cerritos, California. The number 1 outside linebacker in the nation signs with the Oregon State Beavers. So this is a big signing for the Oregon State defense, who did also have scholarship offers to multiple teams, including Utah State, California, Oregon, and the Miami Redhawks tried to get involved in there as well, but eventually Oregon State did end up winning out in what was a great recruiting battle to watch out for over the course of the regular season. But now going inside into middle linebacker spot, and this is a surprise. Number 1 middle linebacker Freddie Brown, who's from Brook Park, Ohio. Not only does he not sign with the strongest in-state school in Ohio State, but actually signs with Western Michigan. Western Michigan, a team that did not go to a bowl game this year, and this was an intense recruiting battle. Ohio State, Iowa, Pittsburgh, Kentucky, and we also saw Indiana and Bowling Green. All of these schools were getting involved in this recruiting race, but it's Western Michigan that ends up winning the battle at the end of the day. Shout out to the Western Michigan Broncos for getting an absolutely elite middle linebacker player. He's going to change that defense. And now we go to the secondary, where we find ourselves with the corners, and we got some fast corners, man. A lot of 4-3s, 4-2s in here. But the number 1 corner was James Johnson out of Broadview Heights, Ohio. He actually is also going to leave the state of Ohio to play his college football, where he will play for West Virginia. The Mountaineers get a big-time corner prospect, and he also had scholarship offers as well to Miami, Notre Dame, and Penn State also offered an athletic scholarship to this young man as well. So shout out to West Virginia for getting a top cornerback prospect. After that, we move out to the secondary, and in the secondary, we actually did not have any 5-star guys. Not really a strong free safety class here in this recruiting cycle, but the number 1 free safety was Tyler Smith out of Norwalk, California, and Oregon does end up getting him, but also was competing with some other schools like Deion Kirby, for example. He wanted this kid as the recruiting coordinator for Air Force. They were in it for a little bit, but North Texas, San Diego State, they also offered athletic scholarships as well, but Oregon does end up winning that recruiting battle. And to round out the majority of the skill positions, we have the strong safety, the number 1 strong safety in high school football, hailing from Siler City, North Carolina, and it is Kelvin Garrett. Kelvin Garrett is considered a hard hitter, and he is going to play his college ball at LSU, and the LSU Tiger. So the LSU Tiger also had offers from Penn State and the University of Miami as well. Very intense recruiting battle as well, but Kelvin Garrett is an LSU Tiger. And now the last of the overall skill players that are to be watched over. Not only the number 1 athlete in this recruiting class, but also the number 1 recruit in this recruiting class as well. It was Carl Magnum from Wichita Falls, Texas, and the Texas Longhorns get him to stay in the state of Texas, as Carl Magnum reported with a SPARQ rating of over 100. He only had a scholarship offer to a couple of other places, Baylor and Oklahoma, but Texas locked him down early, and wherever he ends up playing his football, he's going to be an elite player. And 81 overall, that's good enough to start in college football right away. Watch out for Carl Magnum's name. Now, before we go ahead and check out the team rankings, though, we'll go ahead and check out real quick the number 1 kicker and the number 1 punter. Number 1 kicker does end up being Corey Wad from the state of Mississippi. He signs with the Ole Miss Rebels. This was somebody that, you know, has quite a leg, and that was actually the only scholarship offer that he had was from the University of Ole Miss. Alabama, however, did sign the number 1 punter in the country, 3-star guy, also from the state of Mississippi as well. Alabama was Ricky Jackson's only scholarship offer. So now we go ahead and check out the top classes in the country. And no surprises here, USC signs the #1 class, but they end up signing 7 5-star players. This was an elite class that USC brought in. They were a 99 overall team last year, and I expect them to continue that moving forward. USC, a very strong recruiting class. Michigan was #2. They're going to be looking to build on the success of this past season, which did end up seeing them make it into the college football playoff before losing to Ole Miss. LSU comes in at #3 with the #3 ranked recruiting class. Ole Miss, however, comes in at 4. They were also a college football playoff team. Ohio State at 5. The Ohio State Buckeyes definitely flamed out late in the season, but they did finish by winning the Military Bowl. Texas, a team that did not finish above 500. They managed to go bowling, but they did not really make a lot of noise this season. They were a little bit of a disappointment, to be honest. They come out with the #6 recruiting class, though. And #7 is Oregon State, another team that wasn't all that great this year, but turned out a great class and look to build for a better year next year. And #8 is Nebraska, who nearly made it in to the college football playoff. At 9 is Minnesota. Minnesota with a pretty strong class here overall. They're a very balanced class here. 5 4-star guys. Oklahoma at #10. UCLA at 11. Oregon at #12. Notre Dame at #13. They were champions of the MAC ultimately. Texas A&M at #14. Texas A&M surprisingly just a 2-star school. I was really surprised by that, but Texas A&M looking to get a little bit better, as this is a team that's better than a 2-star program, I think. They almost won their conference, and then things didn't go the way that they wanted to in their bowl game either. At 15 is Florida State, the Seminoles, with a solid recruiting season. Georgia at #16. They were runners-up in the SEC, losing to Miami in the conference championship, and then also losing to North Carolina in the Gasparilla Bowl. Auburn comes in at #17. They were bowl eligible, but were not invited to a bowl game. Army coming in at #18. Army was a team that was competing for the Conference USA Championship, but didn't work out for them. They did also lose to UNLV in the Hawaii Bowl. Navy at 19. They lose to Arkansas in the New Orleans Bowl, but they had a very good season though. Miami, the team that won the national championship, they only followed up with a #20 recruiting class. I thought this was really interesting because of how dominant Miami was throughout the course of the season, but didn't really translate to recruiting. They do get 5 4-star players though, but just an interesting observation. At #21 is Washington. They finished in the top 10. They were a team that did make it to the college football playoff before losing to Miami. Pittsburgh comes in at #22. A very good season for the Panthers, one in which they finished 9-4, but they did lose in the New Mexico Bowl to Iowa State. Florida comes in at #23. They look to be a lot better than the 4-8 record, and hopefully this recruiting class will really help them bolster that roster, because you hate to see a 4-8 Florida team. Nevada actually coming in at #24. Good recruiting class for the Wolfpack. They're going to need to compete in this conference. They actually finished as the top conference in college football in terms of the depth that was, in this particular league. And finally, rounding out the top 25, how about this? The Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. They finished just 2-10, and Hawaii definitely in need for a rebuild, so they are going to get that here. 4 4-stars in this recruiting class. Very good class for this Hawaii team. And for those of you that might be interested in a custom coach, this will be one of the vacancies that will be open if it hasn't already been taken by a channel member or some of you guys that are in the Discord. In terms of some other top 25 classes to look after outside of that top 25, we got the Wisconsin Badgers, who actually did make it into the college football playoffs since they were part of the 5 toughest conference. So Wisconsin did get in before losing to UCLA. They actually put together the 29th best recruiting class, an above average season for Wisconsin, and they're going to be looking to build off of that as they seek a 10-win season in year number 2. As for North Carolina, the Tar Heels actually had a great season, 12-2. They win the ACC as well, not to mention beating a ranked Georgia team in the Gasparilla Bowl. North Carolina with the 11th overall final ranking, the Tar Heels signed the number 32 recruiting class, headlined by a couple of 4 stars at the cornerback and halfback position. As for the Syracuse Orange, they were the real Cinderellas of the college football world here in year 1, the NCSL. Really kind of a team that came out of nowhere. Syracuse was undefeated until they lost to the eventual national champions in the Miami Hurricanes in the semifinal of the college football playoff. Not a great recruiting year though. Syracuse did end up with the 44th best recruiting class. They do sign a couple of 4 stars, both on the offensive side of the football. It was going to be interesting to see how Syracuse can attempt to maintain that level of success in spite of the fact that their recruiting class was outside of the top 40. And then not to mention the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado, they had a 10-win season. They won the Mountain West, but they only signed the 90th best recruiting class. This was a tough recruiting year for Colorado. 9 of their 19 players are 3-star or better, but it's headlined by the 4-star running back in Alexander. So a big surprise there. Colorado, a team that I thought should have been ranked at some point in the season, that just didn't necessarily happen, but Colorado could be in line for some regression in year number 2 with their low overall right now and not a lot of impact players coming in this recruiting class. But guys, that is actually going to wrap things up here for today's episode of the NCSL Dynasty. As what we will end up doing in the next episode, we will actually have our preview of season number 2. We're going to go ahead, we're going to take a look at what that preseason top 25 poll is. What are those initial conference predictions? What are they going to be looking like as well? And shoot, even introduce your custom players and your custom coaches as well, which I know I haven't talked about it at this point in the episode, but if you made it this far, here's how you can get a custom player or a custom coach. For the custom players, how it's going to work is that I'm going to rename guys. So I will have a custom player template down in the pinned comment section. And what you're going to do is fill out that information, choose 3 schools that you would like to see your player go, and I'll do my best to get you onto a true freshman. It's going to be on a first come, first serve basis. Channel members and Discord members, they already got a head start, which by the way, if you want to have that opportunity, make sure you go ahead, check out the Discord and check out the chamber membership in the description. As for custom coaches, that is on a limited availability basis. Only one person, well, let me say it like this, right? Every person can only have 1 coach max, regardless of whether you're a channel member, you're a guy in the Discord, or you're a fan of the YouTube channel. So if you want to have a custom coach, there are a limited number of spots. But if you do want to have a custom coach, go ahead and fill that out as well. That'll also be linked down in the pinned comment section. So we'll be in the next episode of when we go ahead and see the custom players and custom coaches. That will be revealed in that season 2 preview, plus some of the FCS guys from the FCS Dynasty that you might have seen YouTube shorts of. Well, some of those notable players, they might be moving up to the FBS level or this NCSL too. So we'll see what the notable FCS transfers are as well. I'm excited for that next episode, and I'm more than excited to get year number 2 as well underway. And I hope you guys feel the same way. If you do and you enjoyed this video, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me, hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new to the channel. This is John J Gaming on the mic signing off, but hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.